Hello and welcome to another video from Midas Touch Toys, Games, Collectibles. And today we are looking at something that is now very old, is definitely very collectible, and is becoming increasingly more difficult to find, especially this first edition version. Now we are looking at the 1975 release by Target Books from their Doctor Who series of episode paperback novels. And this particular one we are looking at today is of the final story of the third Doctor, which is the Doctor Who and the Planet of the Spiders. Now, it's all based on the classic Doctor Who television series, which was a British science fiction television series. It originally broadcast from 1963 through to 1989. And the series was created by Sidney Newman, C.E. Weber and Donald Wilson. And it depicts the adventures of the extraterrestrial being called the Doctor. And he's part of a humanoid species called Time Lords from the planet Gallifrey. Now the Doctor travels in time and in the universe in his time and space machine, which is called the TARDIS, which stands for Time and Relative Dimensions in Space, which externally appears as a British police box from the 1950s, 1960s. So the Doctor, he has a tendency to help oppressed peoples by combating their foes and defeating the underdog, if you like. And he usually travels with companions. Now, there have been, in the original series, there was 7 actors who portrayed the part of the Doctor. So you had William Hartnell, who was 1963 to 1966, Patrick Troughton, who was 66 to 69, you had John Pertwee, who was 1970 to 1974, Tom Baker, who was 1974 to 1981, Peter Davison, who was 1982 to 1984, Colin Baker, who was 1985 to 1987, and finally Sylvester McCoy, who was 1987 until the series come to an end in 1989. Well, this particular book we're looking at today is from the third Doctor's story, and it is Swan Song story, the final story to feature him as portrayed by John Pertwee in the television series. And this is the book in front of us. And it says Doctor Who and the Planet of the Spiders by Terrance. And you can see an image there of the Queen Spider on the back of Sarah Jane Smith. You've got the Target logo in the bottom left-hand corner. And on the right-hand corner, you can see the Doctor regenerating into his 4th incarnation, which was played by Tom Baker. Okay, that's the front of the book. Let's spin it around to the back and let's have a look at what we got on the back. Okay, so I turned the book round to the back, and this is what we got on the back. So in the middle of the book, you can see that picture of the mandolin with a giant spider on it, and it says at the top, "It's happening, Brigadier, it's happening." Sarah cried out. The Brigadier watched fascinated as the lifeless body of his old friend and companion Doctor Who suddenly began to glow with an eerie golden light. The features were blurring, changing. "Well, bless my soul," said the Brigadier. "Who will he be next?" Read the last exciting adventure of Doctor Who's 3rd incarnation. And then at the bottom, you've got the cover price at the time. So UK was 35p, New Zealand was $1.10, Canada was $1.35, and Malta was 40 cents. Target logo in the middle there, and you got the ISBN number, which is 0426 106 555. Okay, let's have a very quick look at the spline. And it says Doctor Who, and you've got the Target logo at the top, Doctor Who and the Planet of the Spiders, and Terrance at the bottom there. There is a little bit of tanning around the sides there due to age. Obviously, this is from 1975, so we're talking 50, no, we're not, yes, we are 50 years old. Okay, let's open it up and let's have a look inside. Okay, so I've opened the front cover, and this is what it says. It says Doctor Who and the Planet of Spiders, the changing face of Doctor Who. The cover illustration portrays the third Doctor, who the third Doctor Who, whose physical appearance was altered by the Time Lords when they banished him to the planet Earth in the 20th century. Also available in the Target series, you've got Doctor Who and the Daleks, Doctor Who and the Zarbi, Doctor Who and the Crusaders, Doctor Who and the Auton Invasion, Doctor Who and the Cave Monsters, Doctor Who and the Doomsday Weapon, Doctor Who and the Day of the Daleks, Doctor Who and the Demons, Doctor Who and the Sea Devils, Doctor Who and the Abominable Snowman, Doctor Who and the Cybermen, Doctor Who and the Curse of Peladon, Doctor Who and the Terror of the Autons, Doctor Who and the Giant Robot, and Doctor Who and the Green Death. In preparation, Doctor Who and the Dinosaur Invasion, and Doctor Who, the Three Doctors. So this book is sole subject to the condition that it shall not, by way of trade, be lent, resold, hired out, or otherwise disposed of without the publisher's consent in any form of binding or cover other than that in which it is published. It's got a Target's adventure, Doctor Who and the Planet of the Spiders, based on the BBC television serial Doctor Who and the Planet of the Spiders by Robert Sloman, by arrangement with the British Broadcasting Company, corporation I should say, Terrance Dicks, and the Target logo. And this is the interesting bit. So it says Target Books is a division of Tandem Publishing Limited, 14 Gloucester Road, London, SW74RD, a Howard and Wyndham company. First published in Great Britain by Tandem Publishing Limited, 1975. ISBN number 0426106555. Text of book, copyright Terrance Dicks and Robert Sloman, 1975. Doctor Who series, copyright British Broadcasting Company, 1975. Colour illustration, copyright Tandem Publishing Limited, 1975. Printed in Great Britain by the Anchor Press Limited and bound by Wynne, Brendan and Son Limited, both of Tiptree, Essex. Okay, so the contents. We've got the prologue, The Mystery of the Crystal. So there we are. The Menace of the Monastery, The Deadly Experiment, The Coming of the Spider, The Chase for the Crystal, The Council of the Spiders, Arriving on Metropolis 3, Prisoner of the Spiders, The Doctor Hits Back, It's the Lair of the Great One, Return to Earth, The Battle with the Spiders, The Last Enemy, an Epilogue, An End and a Beginning. Okay, so the prologue, I don't know how many pages this prologue is. Okay, there's not that many, so we might have a read of this. It says, night falls suddenly in the rainforest of the upper Amazon. One moment the little clearing was bathed in greenish gloom by the light filtering through the dense carpet of the treetops overhead. The next it was plunged into darkness. The Indian porters were busy setting up the little encampment. Soon the tents were up and a campfire blazing. The explorer came out of his tent and watched the Indians going about their work, unpacking supplies and preparing the evening meal. Everything seemed normal. They had carried out this routine 100 times before, but somehow the atmosphere was thick with fear and menace. Suddenly the men stopped work, huddled together and began to whisper amongst themselves. The explorer thought of the heavy revolver packed somewhere in the bottom of his luggage. Then he shook his head. He wasn't going to turn against everything he had always believed. His business was saving lives, not destroying them. His wife came from inside the tent and joined him. She seemed tiny, almost childlike beside his lanky form. He put an arm and drew her to his side. She nodded towards a little group of Indians. They're still on their warpath then. He nodded his head. You're telling me, love, you could cut the atmosphere with a machete. They stood for a moment listening to the low voices of the Indians. Then the old man who was their recognised leader detached himself from the others and came towards the tent. The explorer's wife looked on as the old Indian stood before them. He was speaking in guttural, urgent voice. She had never mastered the Indian speech, but she could easily guess what he was saying. She heard her husband reply. Languages came easily to him, and he was fluent in all the Indian dialogues. Perhaps it was something to do with being Welsh, she thought. After that, other languages must seem simple. She listened intently to the voices of the two men. It was funny how much you could understand even without knowing a word of the language. She heard the old Indian's voice, stern and insistent, then her husband's protesting, persuading, a further burst of staccato syllables from the Indian, a sweeping gesture at the blackness of the surrounding jungle that could only be a threat. Her husband again resigned, placidly reassuring. The Indian peered keenly at him, black eyes impassive under the fringe of black hair. He gave a final satisfied grunt and strode across the clearing. She could hear him talking to the others in a low voice. After a moment, the porters started working again. She felt her husband hand on her elbow, and he led her back inside the tent. Listen, love, he began. She interrupted him. Don't tell me it's the crystal, isn't it? He nodded. Afraid so. After that last accident at the river crossing, they're convinced it's bad luck. They've given us an ultimatum. It goes or they go. But that was just an ordinary little accident. We've had too many little accidents. They mean what they say. Surely they shouldn't just leave us. They wouldn't just leave us. It could be worse than that. They know they shouldn't abandon us. They'd be in trouble with the government if we complained. So they'd probably decide it was safer to cover their tracks. How? He took a deep breath. These people used to be headhunters not too long ago. They might prefer to make sure we weren't in a position to complain about them, kill us and disappear into the jungle. She sank down on the rickety camp bed. What did you say to them? Well, first of all, they wanted me to throw the thing away. No, I won't do that. Her voice was fierce. He raised his hand, pleading, hang on. I managed to convince them that the safest thing would be to send it away, back to where it came from, right out of their land. We'll reach one of the river trading posts day after tomorrow. You can pack it up and send it in the mail boat. Honestly, it's the only way. She nodded, accepting the situation. Okay, I'll make up the parcel now. He gave her a pat on the shoulder and left the tent to supervise the porters. Relieved that his wife had taken it so well, he knew how attached she was of the souvenir of her old friends and her former life. The girl sitting on the bed's side and reached for the little rucksack in which she carried her personal possessions. From the bottom of it, she fished out a small bundle. She unwrapped it and revealed the cause of it all, the trouble. A many-faced blue stone, a sort of crystal. At last, it seemed dull and oblique. Then, as she looked at it, something strange happened. Little blue fires seemed to spring up deep inside it, and the crystal began to glow. She closed her eyes for a moment and rewrapped the stone. She'd better send a letter with the parcel. She fished in the rucksack again and produced a leather writing case and a ballpoint pen. Josephine Jones, formerly Joe Grant, one-time member of unit, one-time assistant to that mysterious individual known only as a doctor, propped the case on her knee and began to write. Many thousands of miles away, another ex-member of unit crouched motionless in a darkened cellar from his hiding place at the top of the stairs. He was watching a little group of robed figures sitting cross-legged in a circle around an intricately drawn symbol. Candles stuck into an old wine bottles illuminated the weird scene with a flickering yellow light. The men in the circle were chanting, a low guttural voices accompanying themselves with a regular clash of cymbals. They swayed to and fro as it hypnotized. The watching man shivered in the darkness. An atmosphere of brooding evil filled the cellar, and it was growing stronger. In the center of the chanting circle, a shape was beginning to form. Near the watcher's face, a spider's web suddenly vibrated with life as the spider ran quickly to its center. The watcher leaned forward for a better view, and the silky, sticky strands of the web brushed his face. He shuddered away from their touch and jumped back, knocking over a wine bottle at his feet. Just as the chanting was rising to a peak, the bottle rolled down the steps and smashed on the floor with an appalling crash. The chanting stopped dead. The robed figures sprang to their feet. Some of them ran to the head of the stairs, but the watcher was gone. Outside in the gardens of the big old country house, Mike Yates, formerly Captain Yates, one-time member of unit, one-time assistant to Brigadier Lethbridge Stewart, ran through the darkness towards his car. He was more frightened than he had ever been in his life. The little group in the cellar had been thrown into a panic. They gathered round their leader, a middle-aged man with haggard, bitter features. His name was Lupton. He was talking angrily to a younger, weak-faced man called Barnes, who had been sitting nearest the door. "You're sure you didn't see anything?" Barnes shook his head. "It was the wind. It must have been. Blew open the cellar door and knocked the bottle over." His voice tailed off, unconvincing even to himself. "Listen," said Lupton suddenly. "What's that?" They heard the harsh roar of an engine going away into the distance. "A sports car," said Lupton menacingly. "There's only one sports car here. It belongs to our new friend, Mr. Yates." Okay, so that's the prelogue of the story. I'm not going to read the story, obviously. It's going to take you a while, but there's all those chapters there to read. Just one thing, the epilogue at the end, I was going to read. So it says, Sarah Jane stood and looked around the doctor's laboratory. You could tell he wasn't there. She thought by the fact that the place wasn't abnormally tidy, all the tangles of equipment cleared away, laboratory benches bare and polished, stools ranged neatly along the wall. Perhaps the most notable change of all was the empty space in the corner where the TARDIS usually stood. One of the doctor's old cloaks hung from the peg behind the door. Sarah held it to her cheek for a moment, then turned away. Beside her, the Brigadier cleared his throat. "I'd like to keep the place standing by, just in case the old fella turns up again to use it." Sarah said, "He's been gone for over 3 weeks now." "That's nothing," said the Brigadier stoutly. "After the first time I met him, we didn't meet him again for some years, and then he turned up with a completely different face." The Brigadier still sounded a little aggrieved. "He knew if he went back there, he'd destroy himself," Sarah went on bleakly. "We might as well face it, Brigadier. We'll never see him again." The Brigadier made no comment. He didn't really know what had happened to the Doctor and Sarah on Metropolis 3, and didn't see much point in finding out. He had paid a lightning visit to the monastery when it was all over, and found Yates and Sarah boldly shaken, and 4 chaps with complete nervous breakdowns who'd had to be carted off in ambulances. A man called Lupton was missing. There was also some story about the abbot disappearing, but since no one seemed very sure if he'd ever been there in the first place, the Brigadier proposed to let that one Stickley alone. Oh yes, and there was that fellow Tommy. Sarah had made the Brigadier promise to use his influence to get him a place at the university. Remembering Sarah's feelings, the Brigadier made another valiant effort to console her. "Thing is, Miss Smith, the Doctor's is a very resilient chap. I remember once, a wheezing, groaning sound filled the laboratory. The TARDIS began to materialise in its usual corner. Once it was solidly there, the Doctor staggered out and collapsed at their feet." Sarah and the Brigadier made the transition from joy to sorrow in an instant. The Doctor looked. The only word was deathly, like the ghost of his former self. It seemed as if the very fabric of his body had been eroded away. He sat up and looked at them with an apologetic grin. "Sorry to be so long. Got lost in the time vortex. The TARDIS brought me home." He gave the TARDIS an affectionate pat and fell back to the floor. Sarah kneeled beside him, cradling his head in her lap. She began to sob gently, and a tear splashed on the end of the Doctor's nose. His eyes flicked open. "Tears, Sarah Jane? No, you mustn't cry. Remember, while there's life, there's..." The Doctor's eyes closed again, and his head fell back. The Brigadier said quickly, "I'll get the MO. May still be something." He made for the phone. "Too late, Brigadier. He's dead." "Oh no," said a voice behind her. "He is not dead, my dear young lady." Sarah turned and saw Choji. She jumped to her feet, noticing with no feeling or surprise that he was sitting cross-legged in mid-air, about 3 feet above the ground. "Oh dear," she said to no one in particular. "I don't think I can take much more." The Brigadier looked at Choji severely, and as if wondering how he'd slipped into the building without a pass. "Won't you introduce me to your friend, Miss Smith?" Sarah said helplessly. "Well, it's Choji. That is, it looks like Choji, but it's really Campo and Poshy. I think..." "Thank you," said Brigadier. "That makes everything quite clear." Sarah looked up at Choji and said, "You're sure he isn't dead?" Choji nodded. "All the cells of his body have been devastated by the Metropolis crystals. But remember, he is a Time Lord. If I give the process a little push, so to speak, the cells will regenerate and he will be a new man." "Literally?" asked the Brigadier, with a certain amount of foreboding. Choji smiled. "Well, of course, he is bound to look different." The Brigadier sighed. "Not again." And there was more to come. Choji said, "The change will shake up the brain cells a little. You may find him rather erratic at first, but he'll settle down." Sarah looked worriedly at the Doctor as he lay on the floor. "And when is all this going to happen?" Choji chuckled. "Well, there's no time like the present, is there? Goodbye, look after him." And he faded away as silently as he had appeared. "Now wait a moment," said the Brigadier firmly. His voice tailed off as he realised he was addressing empty space. "Brigadier, look," said Sarah. "It's starting." A golden glow was appearing around the Doctor's body. Even as they watched, the features began to blur and change. "Well, bless my soul," said the Brigadier. "Here we go again." And that is the end of Planet of the Spiders. And there's other previews of other books at the back there of the book. Okay, that is the book. So Now you're going to say to me, how well did this book do back in 1975? Well, Doctor Who merchandise back in 1975 was huge. The series was massive. It was very, very big. Pertwee had taken the series to new heights. And of course, yet to come was Tom Baker, who would take it even further into further heights. So it was very, very big. There wasn't much merchandise around during the Pertwee era. In fact, very little merchandise overall. But the books, they decided to do a run of books and really novelising all of the old TV episodes. And most of them were written by Terrance, who had been the script editor for the pretty much most of the Pertwee era. And I think pretty much, or certainly some of the Tom Baker era. So yeah, it was very, very popular. The book's done exceptionally well. We had no videos, no DVDs, no streaming, nothing like that. So for us to relive our favourite TV episodes, the only way to do it was by reading the novels. So that's pretty much what we did. They were mass-produced in abundance, these books, and then they were redone again. You had second impressions, third impressions, fourth impressions, some even fifth impressions. And there were obviously multiple different covers, multiple different backs, but all primarily the same story. And this particular one was no different. Very, very popular and sold exceptionally well. Okay, let's move forward 50 years to 2025, which is where we are today. Do these books come up for sale very often on the platforms? Well, yes. You see a colossal amount of the target books on the platforms. Various different states of conditions and various different editions. So this particular one we're looking at today is the very first edition of Planet of the Spider, so it's the first one to be released. You very rarely see this particular one come up. If you look at all of the Doctor Who target Planet of the Spiders that appear on the popular platforms, you'll see loads of them, but you'll see very, very few of this first edition one, and it's the only one that's got this particular cover, so it's very easy to spot. So this particular version doesn't come up for sale very often. However, you do have the reprints that do come up for sale quite often, and they did, I say this particular one, they did reprint several times because it was a very popular story. So yes, it does appear fairly regularly, but again, condition is quite important for me on books. Just like my photographs and my trading cards and my comics and my annuals, condition is quite important, and I always prefer to have the first edition books. Something about the first edition books, they always seem to be more exciting than the reprints. So wherever possible in my target collection, I have all first editions, just as this particular one is. And I know a lot of collectors are pretty much the same as that. They like to have the first editions. So mine is a first edition as well as this particular one. So condition wise, yeah, I mean, on the platforms they do appear in various different states of condition, and bear in mind that, you know, back in the 70s, 80s, they used the thin paper, which always tend to discolour over periods of time, and that's evident with all of the books. You can see the yellowing around the page edges, and that's age and the type of paper, due to the type of paper that was used back in the day. And there's some yellowing on the cover again, because it's all type of paper that used back in the day. But otherwise, this particular book is in very, very good condition. So to summarise, this particular version doesn't come up for sale very often, but later versions do. Again, if you're going to buy on a platform, do be careful. Somebody's idea of very good condition could be somebody else's idea of acceptable condition. There is a big scope of differences between people's opinions. So do be careful, read the description, look at the images, to save any disappointment once it's been ordered. And don't forget, some of them use stock images and stock descriptions. So if there's no new ones available, and for this there won't be, it would automatically go to the cheapest used item, and that may not be what you're looking for, may not be the condition that you want. So if it doesn't say new and it says used, click that used link and read what you're about to order to save any disappointment when the item arrives. And it wouldn't be through the fault of the seller, and it certainly wouldn't be through the fault of the buyer. It's just the way platforms work, which is ridiculous, but there we are. Alternatively, you don't need to go through any of that rigmarole. You can come straight to us and Midas Touch Toys, Games, Collectibles, where what you see in front of you is exactly the item you will receive should you wish to order. And if we have different conditions, they are listed under different product numbers. So you cannot receive something that you haven't actually ordered. And this particular book, as of today, it is available to purchase on the Midas Touch website, which you can get to very simply by clicking the link below. It will take you straight to the website where you'll be able to find this and many other vintage Doctor Who Target books. And many other vintage toys, games and collectibles come to that. There's over 10,000 products currently available on the website for you to view and purchase at your leisure. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button, because we're uploading videos for every new item that goes into the website. There will be something for everybody, and I'm absolutely positive this is something that you're not going to want to miss, because we literally have thousands and thousands of new items which we're shooting videos for and uploading on a daily basis. So if you're looking for something that you haven't been able to find, something quirky that you want to buy for a friend, or maybe just something from your childhood that you like to own again to help you recuperate your long lost childhood memories, well, stay tuned, keep watching, because you never know the next item we upload could be that item you've been looking for. Okay, that is it for me on this particular item. I do hope you've enjoyed reviewing this wonderful Doctor Who and the Planet of the Spiders Target first edition novelisation with me. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you again next video. So bye for now.